I would like to introduce our MC and speaker now, Dr. Scott Taylor, who leads a double life. Oh, I'm not supposed to leave it at that? Oh, okay. During the day, he is a mentor and educator to small business owners. Scott is a former CEO, skilled in a broad range of leadership and management issues. At night, he transforms. Into a near-death experience researcher and speaker. Scott has interviewed hundreds of near-death experiencers and speaks to the heartfelt needs and desires of experiencers and those close to them, and how well we know that's needed. On holiday, some here in the States call it vacation, Scott facilitates workshops for the Monroe Institute, where he helps participants discover expanded states of awareness and usually brings them back for fun.
Usually.
Scott is passionate about all things Scottish. We could never have guessed that, could we? Including curling. And that's what Jay Leno calls, quote, the Al Gore of Olympic sports. He is married to the love of his life, Ann Hunter, and they have made their home in Edina, Minnesota. So let's give a warm welcome to a man that well deserves all the work he puts in here.
And just so you know, if it goes badly in here, I'm going to play something. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm real glad that you're here. And today, we're going to be talking about how near-death experiencers, having left this world, have come back again to inform us about three things. They tell us about the nature of the physical and non-physical universes, the difference between them and what the rules are, and how choice makes a difference in their lives. Today, my presentation is kind of a summary presentation of the things that you've heard here, and I'm going to take some of the quotes from presentations you've heard so far, mix them with direct quotes from people that I have interviewed, and I'm doing that on purpose because, as we heard earlier, if you hear direct quotes or you read the experience of others that have had NDEs, that energy gets infused into the room, and I would like to do that a little bit today by reading you direct quotes from those who have made the trip there and back again. And sometimes I will just flat out do a summary of research. I'd like to begin by thanking some folks, my lovely bride, Ann Hunter, my friend, William Thomas Wagner, and who is a collaborator on this presentation, and his significant other, Mary Stultz, and my heartfelt thank you to all of the NDEs that I have met who have told me their stories and who have entrusted me with some of their most heartfelt stories. I would like to begin by saying, with this disclaimer, John Dewey, you may remember, is the father of experiential education in the United States. And he called near-death experiences a controversial issue, that reasonable people can disagree. Great. What that really means is that when you study near-death experiences, you got three different viewpoints. And if you listen to me and then you listen to Nancy Bush, you're going, well, how does that work? Well, what I'm here to present to you today is what I believe the weight of the evidence is on how the rules of the unity universe work and how they differ from that of the dualistic universe. Second disclaimer is that when I interview near-death experiencers, there's a thread of the story comes from here, and another thread comes from here, and another thread comes from here. We take them as researchers and weave them into a tapestry that we present to you as whole cloth. It didn't come out of the mouths of near-death experiencers that way, but that's our job, is to try to make a coherent whole. right now, I expect that at least half of you are saying, okay, why should we believe Scott Taylor? Let's face it. He stands up there, dressed in a kilt. What kind of credence does that give him? Pause. I have to tell you that over this last couple days, I've had at least 12 people ask me what's worn underneath a kilt. I'm here to tell you right now, it's my socks and my shoes. My data comes from 41 scientific studies from the US and Western countries, peer-reviewed journals. All in all, the number of experiencers that I have worked with in terms of the kind of research that's out there is over 3,300. In addition, I did my dissertation on near-death experiences. I interviewed over 100 folks to do that process. That was in 2001, and I've interviewed many more since then. And here is probably my most challenging case. The agenda today looks like this. I would like you to leave here today with a sense of what it is that rules the dualistic universe and the non-physical universe, the unity universe. I would like to be able to say, what is that nature, and how, by understanding the nature of the unity universe and the dualistic universe, how choice makes a difference. So I'd like to begin this presentation by going to the end. At the end, I'm going to give you a series of things that near-death experiencers say is important to live in an uncertain future as we move from 2012 and beyond. This is one of them. We must become in our lives the very things that we choose to experience in our world. What that means is if you would like to live in a more loving universe, you have to become more loving first. Now, this is in the traditions of all kinds of peoples and spiritual traditions. But my contention is that this is not the result of some rose-colored eyeglass view of the world, that it has its foundation in the structures of the universe. And what I'd like to be able to do over our time together is to prove that. So let's take a look at the nature of the unity universe. So when we leave our physical bodies, we encounter and engage a similar but dissimilar unity universe. Let's take a look at Fred here. He can see, he can hear, he has snappy yellow pajamas, he can reason, and he can make judgments about this situation. In general, the non-physical or unity universe can look and feel a lot like the physical universe, with some very special exceptions. Let's look at those. Near-death experiencers have told me about the unity universe, and they have used quotes. These are direct quotes from them. We live in an energetic universe. No time, or all time is now. The creation is one and therefore interconnected. All of creation is conscious. Unity energy is love. And we create our own experiences. Let's take a look at each one of those. Daniel Brinkley this morning talked to us about how science can prove that we live in a vibrating energy universe, that it's all about the patterns of energy and becoming sympathetic with those. Well, that matches very closely with what my NDEs tell me. They use things like it's wavelength, it's moving, it's humming, it's moving. Julia said, I believe God is a power, a sense of being, of knowing, and I wonder if there isn't a collective something. Get out of that idea, get out of that thought that God is good or bad. It's just there as energy. And in my favorite quote in all of my research was from a woman named Holly. She told me, God is the sunrise over the Rockies. God is baby's first smile. God is all those things, and yet the term God implies a personality or a persona to this connectedness. It's more than energy. It's how energy moves between all things and all beings, and every atom and neutron and electron and proton. It's a pervasive energy, and energy is an inadequate word. And Julia, I felt I was one with the trees and one with the stars. I do believe that we're all forms of energy. I was looking, feeling. I was the energy running through the leaf, or the energy running through the leaf was my energy as well. It was like the collective. I feel like I'm talking about Star Trek. NDEs experienced the unity universe as energy, all things and between all things. This one has come up time and time again in our conference so far. Martha, who I dearly love, said, I don't think my NDE was done in time. And then she paused and thought better of it and said, how can you not do something in time? Actually, my NDE was done between time. And Holly, there was no sense of future now or then. It was just sort of was all present, a place there where there wasn't a sense of time dimension. And Julia, time? None. It felt like I was there for a long time, but I could still see what was going on down there. It was really weird. And Anna talking about the dualistic universe. Time is made for man's benefit. Once you leave this realm, you're not with man anymore. You're with the spirits, with the Lord. You're on their time, and their time is totally different. Here, time is limited. There, it's for all eternity. I can't prove that, but I know that. So we know the time experienced in the NDE is not a linear progression. We know that to be true. It's experienced as the ever-present now. We've heard a lot about this one this week too, the web. And for my buddy Martha, what we do affects not only ourselves, but also everything in the universe. Everything and everyone is a part of everything else. And then from a series of quotes, Holly said that the universe is interconnected. Zachary, everything is God. Dolly, it's all wrapped up into one. Abigail, connected, whole, oneness, everywhere, all places, all times. Julia, pervasive, completeness, wholeness, oneness. And William, limitless. We are little parts of the whole, that strange sensation of eternity. Let me do that one again because I love that. We are all little parts of the whole, that strange sensation of eternity. And Dolly was trying to describe to me what it meant, this web. And she finally said, well, let me tell it to you this way. I was in a mountain, I was on a meadow, I was in the woods. This combination, it's all wrapped up into one, all of it. Instead of traveling to go to this area, or seeing the mountains or seeing the sky, it's all there. You're within it. I don't know how to describe it. It's just all there. And we'll come back to this next one, but then I asked Dolly, I said, well, I don't get that really. Summarize it again for me. And she looked me straight in the eye and said, we are within the experience of the universe. So all aspects of the unity universe are interconnected all the time. Diverse aspects are actually interdependent and unified into a collective whole. All right, I'm going to go back. One last one. Julia, I felt as if I had a completeness, a sense of wholeness, that I had not had previously, and I haven't had since that sense of oneness. I still have this sense of I-ness, a sense of me, and I was part of something greater and was beginning to understand things. Thank you, Julia, for the perfect segue to universal knowledge. So when people come and talk about the near-death experience and how they communicated in a near-death experience, they very rarely talk about talking. They don't say, I communicated in words, my jaw moved and we had this conversation. Very rarely does that happen. What happens most of the time is that things were communicated telepathically, that whole concepts were just given. And you heard in the introduction that I do work at the Monroe Institute. And Bob Monroe talks about the ability to do things in a thought ball. The fact that I could take this concept and just throw it to you and you would catch it. There wouldn't be a beginning, a middle, or an end. It would just be. You'd understand exactly what it is that was being communicated to you. One of the reasons that people don't talk in near-death experience is that words have boundaries. Well, that's what they're good for. You know, words put boundaries on concepts, and if I speak, then I can take this concept and just, throw it to Dave here. And Dave gets it. But we know that our English language is really inadequate to talk about the concepts or what happens to us in a near-death experience. And so this ability to communicate whole thoughts without boundaries of words becomes really important. And it's one of those reasons that great word ineffable is out there, which of course means, I don't know, we just don't have the words for it. Next, universal consciousness also means that you get to experience things from lots of different perspectives. When we're in the past life review, very often what will happen, let's just play a scene. So I'm at a grocery store, and I'm checking out, and the young girl who's the sales clerk is having trouble running up my credit card, and I'm getting irritated, and I'm getting a little snippy, and so in my my past life review, I get to play that scene out again, and I get to be me, and I get to experience all of that irritation because I got stuff to do, and really, it's not that hard. Okay. Then I also get to experience it as the young sales girl, and I discover that it's her first day at work, and that Bob, her sales manager, hasn't taught her how to run a credit card, and that she's doing the best she can. So I get to live it as me, and I get to live it as the salesperson. But there's also a third thing. There's this omniscient viewpoint, where you get to relive it as this third consciousness that says, okay, Scott, in your life, this incident plays out this way. And it ripples out into all of your life and in your community. And the salesperson, same thing. There's this guy who's wearing a kilt and he's beating her up about this credit card transaction, and it plays out in her life, in her community. And this omniscient viewpoint gets to say, this is how it works in the world. This is what you set forth. This vibration that you put out there had an effect on the world. Now, I want you to take you to Martha, one of my favorite people who I ever interviewed. Just delightful. But she wasn't delightful before I met her and before her NDE. In fact, she would tell you that she was a terrible human being. And I cleaned that up. She was really nasty. She was one of 12 kids, and one of the things that she loved to do was at family reunions figure out ways to get everybody to be yelling at each other and destroying this family gathering. Now, as one of 12, any of you here from big families? I married into a big family. And so you know that when you have a big family, it's not, 12 people don't show up, it's like 60. And that's just, the immediate family. Well, when Martha, went through her past life review, she got to experience what Thanksgiving was like from 61 separate, simultaneous consciousnesses. Awful. And at the same time, what does that say about who we are as a conscious human being? What does that say about what it means to be a conscious human being? Well, universal knowledge is the only way that you can solve that problem, because all of that experience is available to Martha. Franklin, he said, "My near-death experience helped create an honesty, mostly to myself. I had myself fooled for a long time. I'm enjoying life more now." What he's referring to here is that in the unity universe, there's no such thing as hiding or secrets. Everything is known about everything. And for Franklin, that was a huge relief that he didn't have to hide anymore. He didn't have to keep any secrets about himself. He went on to say, "There's an integrity there that we don't have here. I think it's such a gift. And with that gift comes responsibility. I wanted to bring truthfulness back to the physical world. The integrity of living in truth is a gift beyond measure." Isn't that a lovely thing? The idea that the more truthful you are about yourself and who you are as a human being brings such peace. Abraham said, "We all seem to have the same mind. Whatever we were thinking, we all thought together. It seemed like everything that came into the light was answered. If you started thinking about something, the answer was there before you finished asking the question." Okay, and then this next quote is my second favorite quote in all of my research. This one's done by Abigail. "I felt more alive than I ever felt in my whole life. I didn't feel dead at all. The sensation, the insight, that's what really blew me away. All of a sudden, I had a sense of understanding about everything. Everything was clear. There were really no more questions. I could have described to you an interaction of every kind of chemical as an example. It's kind of hard to give you the concept of this sort of thing. Now, when I get into it, the questions start coming in. The rational mind starts to interfere. It's more profound than the collective unconscious, what you read about, the experiences and all that good stuff. Much more profound. There was a point where I was the most brilliant person that ever existed. I could have told you how anything worked. It was just like the whole world, everything, every mystery of life was exposed." So when we talked about the web, the concept that many folks have about the web is that there's these bits of the universe, me, you, the chair, the thing, and it's all connected somehow. But what NDEs have told me is that, well, yeah, that's sort of true and that's kind of right, but really it's more about every bit in the universe, and frankly every non-bit of the universe has within it every bit of the universe, so that it becomes a holographic model. And this is where Dolly was trying to explain to me that we are within the very experience of the universe. Experiencers know that they are one with everything at the same time, not bounded by space. Okay, so this next one is an advanced concept, so I'm going to ask you to be patient with me as I kind of muddle my way through this. Near-death experiencers explain the universe as energetic. We know that, we've heard that a lot. And they're talking a lot of times about the bits, the neutrons, the electrons, the protons, the bosons, the leptons, all those things that make up the universe, and that they're creating this excitement that's out there. But near-death experiencers also talk about between the bits of energy, in that empty space, there is a field of energy that is just sitting there. And it's not active, but it's sitting there waiting for something to happen. It's, in some spiritual traditions, it's called the field of unmanifested potential. The idea that it's just sitting there waiting for something to happen so it can react and turn energy into physical matter. So it's a background energy, and Danyan talked a little bit about it this morning, alluding to it as dark energy. It's not quite the same thing, but close enough that the idea that there is, between all things, this field that's just sitting there, waiting. It's not energetic so much that it's the potential. It's just hanging out there. So if you hit this field with an intent, a desire, a vision, it responds to you in kind. So it's the universe's way of saying yes. Yes, we can put this out there, and it will come back to us in a way that will manifest itself in the physical realm. Pause. Please note that this isn't an immediate deal. Remember that some folks have said, well, it came to me in ways that I really didn't like, or it sure took its darn sweet time about getting here. Remember comments like that this week? Well, remember that this field exists in unity, which is outside of time and space. And it's also filtered by what our deepest desires are, what our plan is for ourselves, what our contract, that's also sitting out there. So I wanted to expose you to this concept, though, that there is this field out there, this unmanifested potential that's just waiting for consciousness to hit it so that it can turn things into physical matter. Okay, Ellen Dye this morning talked about the golden rule. I believe that the golden rule comes from this place. Now, you remember the golden rule is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I don't believe that the golden rule was developed as a nice way to behave in a civilized society. I believe it is rather an imperative on how the universe works. Do unto others. We live in a reactive universe that says stuff just doesn't happen to you. You've got to put it out first in order to get it back. Do unto others. Put it out there first. What you put out is what you get back. Esther Hicks would call that the law of attraction. We are, of course, in a loving universe, and we've heard this over and over again. The idea that we are worthy, we are loved. Thomas said, I knew I was with God and that it was love. The emotion I was getting or giving was love from God. Let me repeat that one. The emotion I was getting or giving was love from God. He didn't own any of it. He was the conduit of it. He said, I didn't see anybody. I didn't see a form or anything like that, but I knew exactly where I was. I was in heaven. The best word is love, a huge L-O-V-E with capital letters. Although it's so overused in our language, it was different than any kind of love we know. It was so pure and unconditional and holy. There were no demands, no gains, no having to be anybody, not having to be some definition. No son, husband, father, teacher, and friend. It was unconditional, perfect, overflowing, very intense and warm. You could write down wonderful words for miles and still not be able to express what it's like. It was overwhelming. So when you put all these things together, you get this idea that of universal acceptance, that heaven is our birthright, that we are returned to the source, or that there's universal acceptance, words to that effect. And then people talking about judging themselves and how that discourages us from loving all parts of ourselves, not loving ourselves as God loves us. So we heard Daniel today talk about words to this effect. Imagine what it would be like to live in a world where you can't get life wrong, that we're all accepted in God's love. In this world, we cannot get love wrong. In unity, God is love, and we are accepted, but we are an aspect of God. In the unity universe, there is nowhere where God is not. So this finishes the nature of unity section in my talk. And what I'd like to do here in this next little bit of time is talk about, to tease out the rules that you've heard here in this conference between unity and duality. And I'm not going to go through and talk about each one of them. That would take all afternoon. But I'd like to pick out a couple on each of the lists here so that you get kind of a sense of where this is going. Interconnected versus boundaries. We talked about words, having boundaries. Thought balls, no boundaries. How about boundaries between you and me? I am me, Bob is you, there's a drum, I'm now a musician. So there's a difference between all three of us. But in the world of duality, we have these boundaries. In unity, we are all interconnected. Universally conscious versus discrete consciousness. If one part of the unity universe is conscious, that means all of it is conscious. Remember the rules that we talked about. The web, the fact that we have a holographic universe, means that every bit of the universe is within every other bit of the universe, and if one bit is conscious, all of it is conscious, as opposed to I'm a different conscious than you are. And thank God for that some of the time. Creation. Remember tuning forks? You strike a tuning fork, and after a while, if you strike another one, they'll start to move in sympathy. Creation is like that. The idea that we put out some sort of an energetic signature and the universe responds in kind. It brings us experiences that are similar in nature and in vibration to what it is that we put it out there. That if we put an energetic request out to that field of unmanifested potential, that's what's going to come to us. And that's why, remember when Franklin was talking about responsibility, he was saying that our physical world, our physical universe, it's our responsibility to put it into the condition that we would like it to be in. But we have to do it first. Relationships. Martha said, "We're here to emulate God by sending love, accepting, and not judging. It's not our place to judge. Just accept and love." She had a long time to sit there and figure out all of those aspects of herself that weren't so nice. Remember, she's the one that used to love to disrupt family gatherings. And as a result, she began to judge herself and to say, what I did was horrible. I lived through that. And she, at some point, began to judge herself as a less than worthwhile human being because that's what was shown to her during her past life review. And then the bigger truth came in, which is God loves all of her, the universe loves all of her, and when she started to love herself, then she could take and start to repair the relationships in her family, and she's been spending the last 12 years doing it. I talked to her not too long ago, and she said of her 11 siblings that she has sort of repaired the relationships with 9 of them, and even after a dozen years since her NDE, 2 of them still won't speak to her. But that's okay, she said. I'll get to them. I'll get them soon enough. In duality, there's difference. And difference, we know, creates fear. All of a sudden you come up upon something and it's not like you, it's different than you. There is a human reaction that says fear. Is that person safe? Is this situation safe? Unity is not like that, of course, because you know everything. You know absolutely what's going on and how it works and what intentions are. So emotion is governed as well by unity and duality. Last one here. The unity universe is all about becoming you. It's about expressing you and all of you. And the more that you are you and the less that you are hiding, the better off you are and the universe is, because that uniqueness that is you becomes real. As opposed to, would you please be normal? I heard that a lot after my NDE. It'd be really nice if you were normal and just fit in. Well, that didn't happen all that well. I'll talk to you about that later, Mom. Okay. Or that spiritual thing. You know, we had a conversation this morning about, in our music segment, where he was using the term religion to describe the dogma, the boxes that we place around our relationship with God or a supreme being of some sort, as opposed to the spiritual, which says, this is my understanding of how the universe works today, and tomorrow I could change my mind, and that's fine too. So when near-death experiencers come back, they're completely changed. I'd like to think there's a reason for it. I think it's because they discovered the unity universe and the rules that gauge the unity universe and run the unity universe, and it works. They like those rules, and they make sense. And then they discover that the world of duality, this world of physicalness, is a very small part of the unity universe, very small. And then they discover that the rules that run the dualistic universe and the rules that run the unity universe live side by side, and that both rules are available to us at any particular time, at any particular moment. And that what people who have had near-death experiences, one of the reasons they're so changed is they come back and there's this realization that they can choose. They can choose which set of rules they want to live by, and they can choose how their vibrations will affect this physical universe because they know how the underlying structure works. I like to think of the dualistic universe like this photo here. The supports on that photo are either or. Dualistic universe. I'm either this or I'm that. It's either you or it's me. And when you have a near-death experience, one of those foundation pieces is knocked away. And what happens to that beautiful house that's sitting on top of it? Well, it crashes and it becomes unrecognizable because the foundation that is underneath our universe is one of unity, where there's one support structure. So people, when they come back from a near-death experience, no wonder they're confused. Their whole concept of how reality works, this physical world works, is dashed because one of the supports has been knocked away. And it's not recognizable anymore. So then, what's left? They have to start making some choices. And they're starting to make choices about which set of rules they want to use. In this situation, this one, in this one, that. Or maybe we were in a session yesterday. Raymond Kinman was talking about he had a near-death experience at 9 years old, and he just stuffed it. He says, I'm not playing by those rules. I'm not doing anything with what I discovered. You can do that too. We have choice. And when we make choices, it turns out that they have consequences. And it's all about who we become then. Okay, so here comes the part where we talk about what near-death experiencers have told us about how to live in an uncertain future. One of these rules is the rule of action. It says to tap into the universe itself, we must know that we are part of the world rather than separate from it. That we must know with every fiber of our being that we are connected to everything else. And when we know that and operate from that place, things happen. And they happen differently than they do in the physical world. It allows us to make conscious choices. Yesterday, in Eben's talk, he used a wonderful phrase at the very end of his talk. Remember that spot when he was going through the slides really fast because he was running behind? And one of the slides said, consciousness paints reality. That's what this is all about. This is about where we put our consciousness, where we put the focus of our attention, what it is that we think, feel, vision about ourselves in the universe. And when we do that, remember that it goes out and it hits this field of unmanifested potential. And if we know that and operate from that place, we take responsibility for it, and it's a different world. Because then we become responsible for the reality of our world. Daniel also talked about when we know this, when we put the focus of our attention, what are we going to put it on? And he had a list. But at the top of the list, you may remember, he says, what kind of world do you want to create? He says, I'm voting for one that's full of compassion, love, concern. Okay, can you remember those three things he did at the end? A spiritual being does things for gratitude. Lovely. Gratitude, admiration, and inspiration. There we go. Thank you. We put our focus on that. We put our attention on that. And that's what happens in our world. This one I have observed more than people have told me about. In my work at Monroe, I know that if we have some sort of a vision about what we would like to have happen, or a request for ourselves, if we hook that with a little bit of emotion, it tends to operate better, faster, stronger. It seems to hit that field of unmanifested potential and create things in a way that's maybe a little bit truer to what it is that we had intended. In this part, intentions answered. This one I like because this talks about the holographic universe. And it says, well, I would like this thing to happen. You know, that my mom is ill and I'd like her to feel better. Well, it's not like I have to say to myself, you know, prayer, please travel to Mankato, Minnesota and fix my mom. Or help her through this situation. The rules of the unity universe say as soon as you put that out there, remember that it's all right here, right now. Right in this bit that I'm standing in, I can make it happen right now. And I think one of the cool things Eben talked about that I wanted to share with you was about a year ago, I had my carotid artery close. You know, that big artery right here that feeds half your brain? And it closed completely. And I'm laying there in the hospital, and I just have this overwhelming sense of it's okay. And this sense of peace about my situation is in much contrast with the doctors and nurses who, and I kid you not, every 10 minutes would come in and say, "Young man, you know that you're really lucky." I like the young man part. But one of the things that I have discovered, as I've spent time about that, because I should have been mortally afraid of having a huge, big stroke that could have killed me. I didn't. Why didn't I? So I spent time on that, and one of the things that I realized was that this sense of peace that I got felt really familiar. And I had to spend time figuring out what that was about. I now know what it was about, because that sense of peace that came on me while I was in the hospital felt so familiar because it was me. It was my future self coming back in time and, "Scott, it's good. It's cool. You're going to be just fine." And the challenge that we have is to begin to expand our boundaries a little bit to say, whoa, if I can do that, then I can go back and heal some of those situations that were in my past. And how about healing some of those things that are in my future? It's all here right now. Eben talked about how physics has now proved that, using particle physics, generators and all that sort of thing, that particles affected today can go back and change how it happened in the past and how they connect in the future. This is really woo-woo stuff. But it's based in science, and it's based in the experiencers that have had NDEs that are at least sensitive enough to go and be able to understand what happened to them and how they can make the rules of the unity universe work for themselves. So, this image here is about coming full circle. Remember, one of the rules that we talked about at the very beginning was we must become in our lives the very things that we choose to experience in the world. And I wish I had a southern accent because I'd love to imitate Danyan right now. If the divine couldn't come today and the divine sent you, what difference did the divine make? How'd they do? Huh? Okay. That's what we're talking about here. How did we make this thing work? Martha reminded me, what we do affects not only ourselves, but also everything in the universe. What you send out is what you get back. If you want happiness, contentment, peace, and love, that's what you give to others. So, this rule that we talked about becoming more loving if we would like to experience a more loving universe, has its foundation in the structure of the unity universe. The fact that the unity universe is reactive, interconnected, holographic, loving, with universal knowledge and acceptance and no time. Each one of those structures affects this universal truth in a different way, but it's based. The reason this works is because it's based on that structure. Last one here is the attitude of agility. Attitude, of course, is a decision. And you may remember Dolly a little while ago talking about how she tries not to judge what's happening in her life as being good or bad. Dolly loves all of her experiencers. Those of you that have followed one of Minnesota's sons, Garrison Keillor, one of the things he writes in his blog on occasion, he says, you know, all experiences are wonderful. They're just material for the writer. Same thing. This is all material for a great soul life. But one of the things about being in this place is from Dali. This openness, this attitude of agility or attitude of openness, interchangeable. This openness brings me courage. Courage is not like drawing a line in the sand and standing toe-to-toe with an opposing force, but it's something more vulnerable. It takes courage to be flexible. It takes courage to be open and not judge experiences. Wrap up. How to live in an uncertain future? You have rules that you can choose. The quality of your decision, of your intention matters. You're responsible for your vibrations and your becoming and investing in an attitude of agility. So, our buddy, we've seen a lot of Einstein in the last couple days. I love this quote. Everything is energy, and that's all there's to it. Match the frequency of reality you want, and you cannot help to get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy, this is physics. Questions? How am I doing? I got 1 minute left. Great. Yep. I got the bad look from Bob here. Oh, I do. Okay. While Paul is making his way to the microphone, you know that Scotsmen are very stingy. How many Scotsmen does it take to change a light bulb? None. It's not that dark.
It's working. It's in the, get it right here. And then okay. Thanks, Robert. Okay. Question is about thought in the unity universe. If you have a thought and it manifests, do you call that prayer?
Do I call that prayer?
Would one call that prayer?
One of my persons that I most struggle with in the New Testament in the Bible is Paul. But on this one, I think he got it right, where he said, all thought is prayer.
Well, I think we all want to know if tomorrow you're again going to wear a kilt.
I am.
Okay, so that's no. But seriously, I think I think one of the things that we want to understand is, or at least I want to understand, is did you have, when you said you were putting together the threads of all these to kind of weave a tapestry, did you see any Was it really unifying in your presentation here, or did you see some things that just didn't fit? Did it all kind of match together easily for you, or was it really a mix and match?
I found that the pleasurable Western near-death experiences matched up beautifully. The parts that have given me trouble, and thank you, Nancy Bush, for publishing your book, the distressing NDEs, I had a terrible time finding people who would talk to me. And that kind of, those kinds of experiences, I just don't have enough experience with. I haven't had enough interviews to be able to say how that all fits in yet. But the pleasurable Western NDEs, absolutely, I thought were very clear about how the dualistic universe works, how the unity universe works, and how they intermingle between the two.
So just as a quick follow-on to that, are you saying that you did identify a number that had distressing and just wouldn't talk about it with you, or you just couldn't find them at all?
Yes to both. I had a few that talked to me. That's not enough to be able to, a small n like that. And maybe it was the way I put out my advertisements or who I am as a human being. They didn't feel safe with me or whatever. I just don't have enough, and I'm very grateful for the work that Nancy did so that I could at least read about them.
Thank you.
Hey, Greg.
So this might be a question that puts you on the spot a little bit, but you're used to that. So I want to know of the rules that you consider very important for human growth coming out of everything you've shared with us. Which have been, or which one, I'll put it that way, single it down, has been the most difficult for you to bring into your life?
No question on that one. It's the last one, openness. That ability, because I had forever and ever the idea that courage was about, doing this, and about doing an opposing force. I don't know about you, but I grew up with sports and contests of all kinds of things where you were opposing things. And what I came to learn from the near-death experiencers is that's not courage. Courage is being open. It's what Martha was talking about. It's being open and flexible in who you are as a human being and who you are in your ideas and the structures that you have. I am continually having to go, cancel, make that go away. I need to look at the world a different way as I'm presented with new information. No question on that one. That's a tough one. I have to relearn it every single day.
So just a follow-up question to that, actually a couple, because what happens then when you encounter in our world this facing you? What do you do? Especially if it literally is. Sorry about that question.
No. It's a wonderful question because I had a very advanced soul teach me about that. And it comes from my world of retail. Believe it or not. My grandfather, our family business was running department stores. We had 17 stores all over Minnesota. And he taught me about something in customer service. That was when you meet somebody that has a strong emotion, I really want to return this swimsuit, even though your sign says I can't return swimsuits, and I don't care if it's against Minnesota state law that you return okay? When you have that, you have to match that emotion. Match it in its entirety. So you match the emotion, and you go, you're absolutely right. You know what, that just doesn't seem to be fair.
Yeah.
And it just disappears. Oh, you get it. You understand who I am as a human being and how upset I am. You bet I understand. You still can't return your damn swimsuit.
I'll just
Sorry.
mirror back to you that I found that the same way too, and it's only recently I've been able to do that. If I actually make that consciousness shift and find myself, I've just almost like learned behavior now. I'll say you're right, all of a sudden, as I'm saying that, or I'm about to saying it, it's like the universe opens up to me why they're right. It's like as long as I'm willing to make the shift, the revelation comes. Oh, they're right, and I can, yeah.
Yeah. And you can't say they're right with a neutral emotion set. You have to match that emotion. You have to match the intensity, and then it's okay. Thank you all for listening, everyone.